Hello guys, welcome to Dr. Science. So today we are going to talk about what is innate and adaptive immunity. So first we have to know the concept of immunity. Immunity is nothing but protection against specific pathogen. It is called as immunity, and this immunity can be of two types. One is innate and one is adaptive. Okay, and in this part 2 I'll be mainly talking about adaptive innate immunity. Okay, but I will give you a brief concept of adaptive immunity, since we have to differentiate between innate and adaptive. Okay, so first we will talk about adaptive immunity. In adaptive immunity we will be seeing mainly B lymphocytes. Okay, B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes. Okay, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. B lymphocytes in the presence of T helper cells will get converted into plasma cells. Okay, and these plasma cells will start producing antibodies. So all these B lymphocyte antibodies and T lymphocytes are called as adaptive immunity. And T lymphocytes are mainly two types, mainly T helper cells and T cytotoxic. And there are also other called as T regulatory, but for this part you just remember these two, T helper and T cytotoxic. So all these cells come under adaptive immunity. So when we draw a little graph here, from 0 to 12 hours you will be seeing mainly innate immunity, and from 2 days to 5 days you will be seeing mainly adaptive immunity. Okay, so let's talk about innate immunity. What is meant by innate immunity? Innate immunity. Innate immunity is also called as native or natural immunity. Okay, why it is called as native or natural immunity? Suppose this is your mother. Okay, and she lives in a town called as Kurnool or something. Okay, let's take another one. She lives in a town called as New York, I mean city. Okay, in New York there are many diseases like chickenpox, coronavirus, measles, mumps, rubella. Okay, so this woman will be having antibodies against it, all of them. Okay, she is having antibodies against all of them, and one day she got pregnant. So what will happen? Wait a second. And one day she got pregnant, and what will happen? All these antibodies against those diseases are going to cross the placenta, right? All the antibodies will cross the placenta and it will go to the baby. So this baby is naturally immune to those diseases, right? So that's why it is called as natural or native immunity. Okay, and what is the other meaning of innate? Innate is nothing but you are inborn with it. You are born with. Okay, it is born with. Okay, it means you are born with those antibodies. That's why it is called as innate immunity. In this innate immunity, there are different types of cells. First we will be talking about epithelial cells. Okay, next we will be talking about phagocytotic cells. Okay, phagocytotic cells, and these cells include neutrophils, sorry, neutrophils and macrophages. Okay, next we will be talking about dendritic cells. Next we will be talking about natural killer cells. Next we will be talking about plasma proteins which are associated with innate immunity, and those include complement. Okay, complement system. So all these epithelial cells, phagocytotic cells like neutrophils and macrophages, dendritic cells, natural killer cells, and plasma proteins which include the complement system, all comes under innate immunity. Okay, and this innate immunity, as I told you, it comes from 0 to 12 hours. So first we will talk about what are meant by epithelial cells. So suppose this is your skin, and this is one epithelial cell, and here is another epithelial cell. These are your epithelial cells. Okay, present on your skin. Epithelial cells are not only present on skin, they are present on one skin. The second one is gastrointestinal epithelium. The third one is respiratory epithelium. Okay, so these epithelial cells will be having certain cells. Okay, these are called as defensins, and not only that, they will also have lymphocytes, T lymphocytes. Okay, so any microbe like coronavirus or measles, mumps, rubella, they cannot attack these epithelial cells. Okay, they are the first line of defense. The first line of defense is so what is the first line of defense? Obviously it is innate immunity, because skin is protecting you from all the microbes outside the world, right? So it is also called as the innate immunity. So we talked about epithelial cells. Next we will talk about the phagocytotic cells. Yeah, so why are they called as phagocytotic cells? I'll just explain it to you. In this category there are mainly two types. One is neutrophils. So these cells are neutrophils. Okay, you just imagine they are neutrophils. And the other thing is macrophages. What is the difference between macrophages and monocytes? Can you say it? Okay, monocytes, so this is a blood vessel. Okay, monocytes are small cells which are freely circulating in the blood. This is a blood vessel. They are freely circulating. Okay, they don't have, they are like teenage people. Okay, they always roam on the roads, right? Okay, these monocytes are freely circulating in the blood vessels, and one day they decided to get a job, and they travel to liver. Suppose this is the liver, and they get mature. Okay, they get mature here, and these are called as the matured monocytes are called as macrophages. And what happens to them once they become mature? They want to settle there, they want to get fixed into a job, right? So they are also called as tissue, since liver is a tissue, fixed, they are fixed there forever, macrophages. Right? So that was about the difference between monocyte and macrophages. So monocytes are freely circulating in the blood vessels, but once they reach a tissue like liver or lungs or spleen, they get fixed there and they stay there forever. So they are also called as tissue fixed macrophages. Okay. So phagocytotic cells include neutrophils. So neutrophils, they are present in acute inflammation. It means less than 24 hours. Okay. And whereas macrophages, they are presenting chronic inflammation. It means greater than 24 hours. And these macrophages, okay, let me draw a macrophage here. These macrophages have lot of receptors present on it. These are the receptors. Okay. What is the function of these receptors? So whenever coronavirus has these spike proteins present on it, okay, whenever this macrophage here, this macrophage have a lot of receptors present on it. Okay, these receptors will sense these spike proteins. When it senses these spike proteins, what will happen to the coronavirus? What do you think? This macrophage will go and eat the coronavirus. Okay, it will go and eat the entire coronavirus. So because it is doing the eating process, this process is called as phagocytosis. Okay, it means eating up the entire organisms, eating the organism. So that was about neutrophils and macrophages. So next, what is the next type of cell? The next type of cell is dendritic cells. So what is the function of dendritic cells? This is very important to know, because dendritic cells are also called as antigen presenting cells. Okay, why they are called as antigen presenting cells, you have to know it very perfectly. Okay, so suppose this is a dendritic cell. Okay, these dendritic cells also have a lot of receptors to sense microbes like coronavirus or different types of bacteria. Okay, so this is the coronavirus present here with spike proteins present on it. Okay, what happens means the dendritic cells are never called as phagocytotic cells because they cannot eat the virus or bacteria, whereas neutrophils and macrophages, they can eat the bacteria or viruses, so they are called as phagocytotic cells. Whereas in the case of dendritic cells, what they will do, they will just take a little part of it. Okay, they will eat this little part, like the spike proteins or different type of proteins present on coronavirus. Okay, once they eat these spike proteins, they will digest them, and after digestion they will present these spike proteins on their surface. Okay, on all of the surface they will start producing these spike proteins. Okay, once these spike proteins are on the surface of the dendritic cells, the T lymphocytes are very dangerous. Okay, since they like viruses and bacteria, and they will love to digest them. These T lymphocytes come and take a bite of these spike proteins, and once they take the spike proteins, they will start eating the spike proteins of the coronavirus. Okay, so what this dendritic cell is doing, dendritic cells are nothing but antigen presenting cells. It means the spike proteins present here are the antigens. They will they will eat this part of the spike protein, they will digest it, they will present on the surface. So, and they will present these surface antigens to the T lymphocytes, hence they are called as antigen presenting cells, APC. Since you already know the process, okay, that was about dendritic cells. And dendritic cells are mainly found in lymph nodes and epithelia. Can you name the three epithelia I told you earlier? The one is skin, the first one is skin, the second one is respiratory epithelium, the third one is gastrointestinal epithelium. So dendritic cells are present in all of these tissue. They are also present on certain types of tissues. Okay, so that was about dendritic cells. Next we will talk about natural killer cells. Natural killer cells. What are these natural killer cells? Okay, so this is a house. Suppose this is your cell. Okay, this is your cell, and herpes virus. Okay, this is the herpes virus, and it goes inside your cell. So what will happen? You cannot go and bind your cell, right? Antibodies will bind extracellular only. Extracellular. But the virus is present inside the cell, so it is intracellular, right? So the virus is escaping from the antibodies, so it means it is escaping from the defense mechanisms. So here comes our natural killer cells. They are very smart. Okay, natural killer cells, they can enter into our cells and they can engulf this entire pathogen. So natural killer cells help in intracellular destruction of viruses and bacteria. Okay, so that was about natural killer cells. Next we will talk about innate lymphoid cells. So I already told you about adaptive immunity. Lymphoid cells are only seen in adaptive immunity, right? B lymphocytes, T lymphocyte and antibodies, they are seen in adaptive immunity. Whereas but these cells, in this case, some lymphoid looking cells, they are not, it was recently discovered that some kind of cells which look like lymphoid cells, they were present in innate response. So these cells are called as innate lymphoid cells. So what is the time limit of innate and adaptive immunity? So here is our graph. Innate immunity is between 0 to 12 hours whereas adaptive immunity is 2 to 5 days. Okay, so innate lymphoid cells, normally adaptive, in adaptive immunity you see the lymphoid cells. So these innate means 0 to 12 hours, it was present during this 0 to 12 hours, so they named it innate lymphoid cells. Okay, so we talked about all the cells which are involved in innate immunity, and the last one are the plasma proteins and complement system. So complement systems are nothing but small proteins. These are the small proteins like C1, C2, C3, C4 and etc. All these proteins comes under innate immunity, and this complement, these are the complement. Okay, this complement can be activated by three ways. One is classical pathway. Classical pathway will activate the complement proteins. Then the second one is alternate pathway, and the next one is mannose binding lectin pathway. I will briefly discuss about the classical, alternate and mannose binding lectin pathway. So what is the classical pathway? What happens in classical pathway? In classical pathway, the antibodies are innate or adaptive? Antibodies are adaptive, right? As I told you, the B lymphocytes in the presence of T helper cells will convert it into plasma cells, and plasma cells will be producing these antibodies. These antibodies, suppose this is coronavirus and these are the spike proteins, and these are the antibodies which are neutralizing the spike proteins. Okay, and these antibodies will activate complement proteins C2, C3, C4. Actually it is not in order. Okay, so classical pathway is mainly adaptive. Okay, because it is activated by antibodies, it is called as adaptive immunity, whereas alternate pathway and mannose binding lectin pathway, both of these are innate. Okay, innate immunity. Since they are not activated by antibody, they are activated by some other means, they are called as innate immunity. And last but not the least, we will be talking about C-reactive protein and lung surfactant. You know, for babies, lung surfactant is very important. These two, C-reactive helps in the like sprinkling on the donuts. Okay, the C-reactive protein, suppose this is the coronavirus, the C-reactive proteins, it's like a donut. This coronavirus is a donut, and these are the toppings present on the this C-reactive protein acts like toppings on the donut, and later the antibodies comes and bind with them. Okay, that is the function of C-reactive protein, and this lung surfactant helps in protection against certain types of viruses. Okay, so all these C-reactive protein and lung surfactant comes under innate immunity. So I will give a brief overview. So what are the cells involved in innate immunity? Can you name them? The first one was epithelial cells. Okay, wait a second. Here is innate immunity. So what are the cells which will come under innate immunity? One is epithelial cells, which are present in skin, gastrointestinal tract and respiratory epithelium. The second one, phagocytotic cells, phagocytotic cells, which include neutrophils and macrophages. The third one is dendritic cells. Dendritic cells are also called as antigen presenting cells. Nice. The fourth one is natural killer cells. They help in what they help in? They help in intracellular viruses, killing of intracellular viruses. Okay. The fifth one is innate lymphoid cells. The sixth one is plasma proteins, which include complement system. Okay, so this was about innate immunity. In part 3 I'll be covering about adaptive immunity. So before going into that, I want to show a small photo. Oh, okay, so here is our, let me change the color. So here is our innate immunity. It includes epithelial barriers like present in the skin, phagocytotic cells, so here are neutrophils and macrophages, dendritic cells, complement protein and natural killer cells. This will be activating between 0 to 12 hours, whereas adaptive immunity, which are B lymphocytes. B lymphocytes are in the presence of T helper cells converting into, these are the plasma cells, and plasma cells will start producing antibodies. So dendritic cells are presenting antigen to the, so here is the dendritic cells, and it, as you can see, it has eaten a part of the antigen and it is presenting to the T lymphocyte. Okay, now the T lymphocytes are converted into effector T cells, and this takes place between 1 to 5 days or 2 to 5 days. Okay, thank you, and please wait for part 3, in which I will be covering about adaptive immunity. In innate immunity, we also have to talk about the toll-like receptors and nod-like receptors. Thank you.